All righty.
All right, welcome back to our last segment of Meet Me in the Middle. We've got just amazing professional women here that we are interviewing today. And one of my last questions to you ladies is, well, let me compliment you first of all. Again, thank you for being on the show with Joy and I. Thank you for being our daughters. We're so proud of both of you, and you are wonderful professionals in your own right, and I mean that with all my heart. um I just I'm just amazed at, I mean, I know my daughter, and I've talked to you a little bit, Carrye, but I'm just amazed at your responses and your inner thoughts with the different things that we've been talking about today. We started out talking about, what's it like to be raised as a PK. We talked about Black Lives Matter and what's going on socially in our world today. We talked about how you guys are parenting through COVID, and just getting the millennial thought process, and just kind of getting inside your minds and just kind of seeing where you're at. I had my own stereotypes and prejudices about millennials. You guys have totally busted that open today and broken it down. But one of the things that we said before was that you guys are a fearless generation, and you guys are carrying the mantle of fearlessness forward. One of the things that I wanted to touch on in this last segment is that you both are professional women in your own right. How has inequality or discrimination affected you with your professions, if at all? Carrye, I'm going to start with you first, because I know after speaking with you, you were a nanny. You've been a homemaker, which is one of the hardest jobs on the planet. Much respect, much respect. I did that for many years as well. I know what that's like. My mother was a homemaker for many years, and then she went back into the workforce. You are also an author, and tell us about the 2 books that you've written.
Sure. So my first book was called Gray Faith, and that it was kind of birthed out of being a pastor's kid, and goes into detail about kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of being raised in church culture. And it just goes into all the questions I had about that culture I grew up in. But the heart of the book is really finding God outside of the black and white answers.
Mhm.
And that, for me, that was my journey, was having to break away a little bit from that to really know God at a deeper level, in the middle of the uncertainty and the gray, which I know is your key theme here.
Yeah.
And then the second book was How to Be a Moon, and it's really about embracing our worth as believers, and understanding our full and permanent worth in Christ and the love he gives us, and then realizing that we're meant to be like a moon that reflects our light source, which is God, and illuminates us to shine back into the darkness. So it kind of breaks that down, and it's a call to step out and be that light.
Yeah. So have you? I smile because I think one of my fantasies is to become a really great writer. And
That's awesome.
when people that have that natural gift, Cidny's a really good writer as well. I don't know that Cidny has authored a book yet, but I think that look at her face. Yet.
It's in there. It's in there.
But she's absolutely an incredible writer. Both of our children are. They're very, very good writers. But it just makes me smile and beam when I see that people have that natural gift. I know one of Cidny's natural gifts is she's very artistic. She's been drawing since she was a child, and she takes pictures. She's a great photographer, and she doesn't take pictures. She's a great photographer. And so in your journey, have you experienced any type of discrimination or inequality, or have you felt any type of inequality, being an author, being a nanny, being a mother? When you tell people that you're a homemaker, what responses do you get?
So my answer might be a little outside of the box, but one thing I realized is that Joe Saxton's an author that I love, and she talks about you can't be what you can't see. And so I have found, for me, I got to this point in my life where I feel like God gave me this gift of being a communicator. And I, obviously I come from generations of pastors. I would never, ever in my life have seen myself as a pastor, minister, any of that kind of position. And part of that is just the culture, the traditional church, that I've kind of grown up in my whole life. There were very few even women teachers for me to look up to.
Okay.
And so I'm almost like coming to this point now where I'm like, oh man, God, if you made me a man, maybe I would have been a pastor way back when. And this, but I think that God has to keep reminding me, well, nope, I made you exactly who you are for a reason. And maybe the delay in understanding that gift that he's given me is for a reason as well, and that's going to inform what I speak on and how I share. So I'm currently at that place where I'm like, God, I don't know if you want me to be a pastor, but I just want to be fully open to that. And it's hard to do that when you haven't seen it, so I would say it's almost more that than pushback from being a stay-at-home parent or as a nanny,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cidny, where have you seen some inequality in your life that you've experienced?
Come on, as far as the workforce?
Well, you can have at it, sister.
I was asking like for clarification as far as the workforce.
Any of those.
Hey, Joy, you get your button again.
I'm pushing. That's a button, so I'm pushing it.
I've been working since I was 13. In various jobs, whether I was making a lot of money or wasn't. But as far as the workforce, you're taught that you have to do twice as much to get just a little bit. And I think being a woman, you have to be a little bit more assertive, and a little more cutthroat. So I have 2 businesses and I'm an executive of a nursing home, and I have to be cutthroat. And what I find is that in me being cutthroat, I guess, no nonsense, they would compare me to a man and how a man would move, because I do it without any bias and there's no emotion that's connected to the decision that I have to make. And so I had to get a graduate's degree to even be looked at, to even be considered. And I guess, again, as you matriculate through the workforce and whatnot, it's not about what you know, but who you know. So really having to play against stereotypes as well, because on the outward, I used to have braids in my hair all the time. So the stereotype with braids is one thing, like, okay, she's this. But when I start talking, then it's like you see the shift, and then they're wondering, I'm sorry, I put my do not disturb. I don't know why people are disturbing me.
Hey, you're editing this, so hey, you got it.
True, I might not. But you see the shift, like, oh, why are you working here when you have this? And I look at them, and it's because you haven't given me the opportunity, or and so how has it been as I matriculated through? When I tell you that it was a God move for me to even get into this position that I'm in now, but it took me having to prove myself 10 times over to show that I was worthy of even getting into a position, to get myself into a position.
And your hair.
And the funny part, and my hair. My hair had a lot to play in it.
Okay, so now that's a black-white issue, yes?
You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. I think it is a black-white issue, but it's also how other people, because again, there's division within the community. There's division within anybody's community. So if I see you look like this, I think one way, or she may have attitude or something, or just but yeah, when they saw braids inside of my hair, it was a different story. But when I had a conversation, oh, well, you don't sound like, and you talk like.
You don't sound like you look.
Well, no. You don't sound like the stereotype that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't sound like you look. I mean, and even in radio, I don't sound like I look. So and then having to deal with men, and the way that you deal with men, particularly white men, there's a different way that you deal with. There's a different way that you handle white men. And I think as white women, you understand there's a way that you handle white men, because you have to feed into ego. You have to play that game. If you're a drinker or something like that, you know how to kind of, I can tell you that I've had many conversations of me knowing what people drink.
Yeah.
Like you have to get into that world. And so that's also, being a communicator, that, Carrye, you have to be able to kind of shift and read somebody. Discernment, it goes back into that, be able to read somebody and say, okay, this is how I need to talk to you and whatnot. Looking at you in the eyes, firm handshake. I don't like to boast about my degrees, but in a situation, I'm going to have to say, hey, you know what? I have this, but the issue might become you are overqualified for a job.
Which is another form of discrimination.
Because Black women are one of the highest educated groups in America. And so, okay, I have a master's degree and whatnot, and and what it took me.
You have what, 10 plus years in radio?
I have over 10 years in radio.
That was one of your first loves.
Yeah.
Then you did your bachelor's degree, you went on and did your master's in public health administration. And I'm going to go back to the hair change thing, because I remember when she was working at different places, and I won't name them, but she was working at different places, and it was just, we would talk on the phone and she was like, Mom, I just can't get a break. I just can't. And I said, you know what? You're going to have to change some things about yourself and play the game. And
in the Deep South, you have to play a
South.
Different game. And see, even my in-laws told me that too.
This and her in-laws, exactly. They're both in healthcare. But this hairstyle should not disqualify me from a job. And then when you hear my voice or you hear how articulate that I can be, it's like, oh, the light bulb goes on. Oh, this is not matching, like you said, Joy, the stereotype.
Right. In my interviews, I would have to bring
whack thinking. I'm sorry. That is whack thinking.
In my interviews, I would have to bring extra. So how we just have an interview here, I would have had to go on the extra mile. I've gone to where I've built a whole website for somebody. I didn't even get the job. You don't even have the job yet, but to show what I'm worth, I built a whole website, a whole presentation, and said,
a whole dinner.
Cooked a whole dinner.
We cooked truffles.
Cooked dinners. Done you have to go above and beyond. But but here's the thing, and it's not necessarily in that sense a Black or white thing. It's it's the economy, because jobs are hard to find at this point too. But the factors in that is, okay, then you have to play the game. Then you have to, I have to change my hair. I have to wear certain clothes. I have to present myself in a certain light. I have to talk about certain things. I have to feed your ego. It's a lot, and I have to work 20 times as hard just to sit at the table.
Wow. Okay. That phrase right there, I have to work the table. So that's a quote. So you're looking at corporate world kind of, or the business world or something like that. Carrye is looking more at ministry world. Yes, I know you got people trying to get in. Carrie's got people knocking on her door now by now. So we'll help you get through this fast, but this is real life. We're in real life here.
No, I'm sorry.
So
I mean, and Carrye has it. I'm pretty sure Carrye has it worse being in communications.
yeah.
Communications is a beast.
Well, I think for me it's been, again, it's more that internal church challenge of women, men, and it's expected that men will speak to men and women. A lot of times it's expected that women will speak to women only audiences. And so for me, I don't feel, I love women. I want to empower women. Great. I'm all for that. But I also feel like part of the way you empower women is by speaking to mixed audiences, because I don't see that as, I don't think that God is saying women don't have something to give, to share to males. And even, I think it's funny, like at church you go and women are constantly listening to a male perspective, and that's totally normal, right? But then for a man to listen to a woman's perspective, it's almost, I think sometimes like, whoa, hold on, like, why do I need to listen to this, and what do I have to learn from this? So I think it's more of like that mental, and then even, I don't know if this is for you, Cidny, but I even see women who, like when I first spoke at my church, there was a little bit of like, even with the women, kind of a couple were like, oh, wait, what? And it was almost like they had to justify it somehow and figure out, because again, it's what we're raised in.
Now, Carrye, the question becomes, what age group was that for you that did that to you?
And it's definitely I would say probably older than our parents for the most part.
Which then is the reason why, again, you're starting to see that shift within the church, as far as a lot of us are leaving because of that mindset of women, you have to be subservient to the man and blah, 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 blah. And I understand gender roles. I get it and whatnot, but Jesus used women. Jesus used donkeys.
Exactly.
And it's, come on, he'll use rocks if you don't do it, so I mean, come on. So that's that. And so that's why, I get what you're saying, because it's a lot of older people inside the church. So
well, so here's the thing. Okay, women, with powerful women that you are, where do we go from here? Because there's got to be a where do we go from here, and I want to finish up a look. I mean, this is a topic we could talk about forever, and I'm telling you, you two are like the next generation of meet me in the middle. I'll tell you that. When your mamas are gone, you keep it going. But where do we go from here with an attitude of let's be a part of the solution? Because I mean, we can sit here all day. I listen to a lot of when you look at social media right now, everybody's bashing everybody right now, and there's so much tension. But I'm like, yeah, okay, I want to talk about the tension. We got to talk about the things that are unequal and that need help. But where I believe we have a way forward. So what do you think that is? And I'll put that out to both of you. Have at it.
I mean, you talking about as far as just where do we go from where, as far as women and just women equality and whatnot, or
yes, in your particular field or just in general, and you're talking about, like Cidny, you were talking about how there's a generation that kind of has a certain assumption and stereotype, and so we want to honor other people too, because they matter, but still move forward in the gifts that God has given us, whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's in writing and speaking or whatever it is that your gifts are, whether it's in art, photography, whatever that is. So yeah, carry on.
I think number one, you cannot be afraid to be uncomfortable, to get uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is if you're in a position where you can invoke change, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Saul had a time, and then it was time for him to go.
Right.
And then someone else came.
Right.
Sometimes you have to force some of those people out. So whether it's inside of the church, some people need to go. Right. I know we kid about, some people, need to take dirt naps. Well, figuratively speaking, they do, because there won't be change. So I know that professionally, when I come into a situation, I have to assess where is the most pushback going to be as far as me having to change something. That's one of the first things that have to go, is change. So if you're a roadblock, you got to go. If you're a roadblock, you got to go, you know, and then that way I know it can start the change and whatnot. Because that's one of the first things you have to do. You have to remove the cancer. And I think in this sense, we have to remove the cancer in a lot of situations, whether it's church, whether it's a job, whether it's, you know, you got to remove it in order to start that change process. Then give people a chance. I'm all for protesting women equality and, you know, and racial equality and whatnot. I'm all for going out in the streets. I get that, you know, but for people that are in a position where they can actually make action happen, make something happen, people need to do that. So if you take that initiative, hire more women. There's reports that you have to pull all the time where it has to show the equality, EEOC. There's reports with that, where it shows you gender and race, how many you have inside of there. If you have only one person, on one woman as an executive in a room, and, you know, and all men, that's an issue. That's an issue. Hire people, hire more. I mean, we're extremely qualified. We're not all super emotional. I mean, and that's the stereotype. You know, we're just emotional. We just off of impulse and whatnot. I mean, but if you're in a position where you can make that call, make that call. Give people a chance. Go patronize a woman-only company. Go do that. You know, help small business out like that. So I think, one, you got to get rid of those roadblocks. And that's in all situations. You got to get rid of those roadblocks in order for change to even start.
That's very hard too.
It's easier said than done. And especially within church, when someone's been in that position for 20, 30 years and does not want to give that up, well, you know, and then because church is so political, and then everybody's family, and then everybody, you know, it just, but that, I can tell you that,
I'm laughing because it's just, you're speaking it.
I mean, and the thing is, that's the reason why the church is not going anywhere, because you have them same people that have been there for 20, 30 years in the same positions. You gotta evoke change for any type of equality or anybody trying to put in. You have to be a proponent of change, and until people's mindsets, you know, get to that point, you're not going to.
Yeah.
Carrye, what are your thoughts on that? As we get ready to close this session out, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like Cidny brought a lot of the practical, tangible changes. And I guess I would speak a little bit to the internal. But I think what happens for a lot of women is you don't realize the almost like an inferiority or a sort of something you take on within yourself. Especially I think when in the church, where whenever your feeling of inferiority is tied into how God sees you, and if someone is portraying something as, oh well, God sees you this way and you can't do this because God says, you know, if we're not careful, we can start to tie the way God sees us into something that is not true. And so for me, I have had to, this leads to even like this permission culture where I feel like I have to wait on a man to give me something, or a man to give me a position, a role, or whatever, or validate whether God could have given me this call. And so for me, it is really God having to root out the lies that I grew up with and believed, and then replacing those with, this is what I actually say about you. This is what I've put in you. This is who you are. And you don't need a man or woman to validate that. You don't need to wait on permission if I've already given you my permission and my worth over you. And so maybe that's part of what I would say is to any women out there that if you feel like you're sitting around and waiting for that change, just trust who God's who he's made you to be. And I think that internal battle sometimes is half the struggle. And then the second piece of that is I have been so grateful for men who have actually taken the time to stop and hear my story and listen to me and give me a chair at the table. And I assume this is again how with racial issues it's the same. We can't until we're willing to all give everyone a voice at the table. Change isn't going to happen, and that's how I feel here too. It's until people are ready to actually listen and set aside your pride, set aside what you think is happening, and actually hear someone else's.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the other thing I want to say for women, don't be afraid to say how much you're worth.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go for a job and they ask you, how much do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to sit there and say, I want $160,000, because you know that you put in work.
Yeah.
You know that you know more than likely you had to do more work than that guy over there and whatnot, and that you have so much to put to that table. Don't diminish yourself. And I've had to learn that over the years as well. I've had to learn that and just know I've put in a lot of work. Just like with your books and whatnot, I've put a lot of sweat equity inside of here. This is how much it's going to be worth. And I promise you, someone is going to buy this. Even if it's not you, then you're just not the audience for me. Same with a job, same with any of that. You're just not the audience for me. I mean, a gentleman gave me the opportunity I have now, and I'm super grateful for him, and whatnot. So not all men are evil, not at all. Not at all. But you do have to talk about there is inequality. There is. I mean, I've had to fight for women in my workplace. No, you're going to pay her this much because we're about to offer him this much.
Yes.
We're not doing that.
Knowing who you are, like Carrye was saying, knowing who you are, who God has made you to be, and going out in that confidence out to the people around in the world, not as a, I'm so proud of myself kind of thing, but no, this is what I'm made to do. This is just a reality. God made me to do this, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I have a lot to offer because that's what God's given me to do. So
we have to speak life into each other. And I mean, and a lot of the role models out here, they put the stereotype on women. It's your looks, it's just everything physical, your aesthetics, everything about that. Is, and if you're an engineer as a woman, you look like this. Absolutely not. We as women have to come in, because quite honestly, we as women are one of our biggest roadblocks as well. I mean, inequality, we're just as bad with each other, And so I think that internal, once we as, get ourselves together internally and whatnot, and then have other women to say, hey, you know what, we're not just a baby making factory. That's not just what we are, because a lot of women believe that about themselves too. This is my value. I am this, I am that, I'm an author, I am a writer, I am a public speaker, I am this, I'm an engineer, I'm a first lady, I mean, I'm a president, I'm a we have to do it ourselves.
listen, you two have you got a lot going for you. God has his hand on you, and you're just powerful women who are here for such a time as this to make an influence in our society and to help bring about the change that needs to happen in so many areas. We have spent now about 2 hours total, and I want you in videoing and interviewing you guys with the 4 different episodes. So everybody go back to the first, be sure to watch them all. But Carrye, I want you to thank Jeff for watching the kids so you could do this. Cidny,
I will.
For watching your little buddy there so that you could do this. And guys, don't stop. Keep the passion that is within you is on fire.
Yeah.
Keep it going on the path that God has marked out for you. And I hope that you two can keep getting together, because I think you're like a power team.
I will. I'm gonna find you, Cidny.
Friend me.
Oh my goodness. You guys said some
listening. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for being on the show, Carrye and Cidny. Your husband, special thanks for being Mr. Moms during this time. And you guys, you closed out with some powerful issues and some powerful words of wisdom that don't believe the lies, believe what God says about you, stand up for truth, advocate for one another, because God made us in his image and in his likeness, and we are powerful beings. And so I love the similarities that you guys have, and I love the contrast, and it's just a good thing. This was a great. We had a wonderful. Tennille hangs her head at me, like, oh, Mom.
Yeah, like, oh, my mother, look at the rolling.
Yeah, she's shaming me. But Joy and I always have such a great time together, because God put us together. God put us together as sisters in Christ, and we just welcome everybody that we have on this show, and there hasn't been one regret yet. And you guys have been just awesome. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Guys. Woo, this was just so good. It's hard to shut it off, but hey, maybe we'll come back in a couple of months and see how you're doing. How about that?
Okay, her person's coming.
Love you guys. Thank you. Thank everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.